If you're like me or most everybody else in the world nowadays, you're freaking busy. Whether it's work, working out, nutrition, filming these, editing these, posting these on social media, keeping up with my family, playing with my dogs, working on my house, I am always busy and I'm struggling to find time to cook food. That's why meal prepping is key for me to stay on top of my nutrition. One meal prep I do every single month, no questions asked, is my high protein pork fried rice. It's really easy to make. It only takes about 30 minutes. It's really high in protein, and as with everything else I make on the channel, it's simple and freaking delicious. So if you're looking for some Chinese food that lets you hit your macros really easily, let's get started. Welcome back to Former Fat Guy Fitness. I'm Tyler, your former fat guy. And for the pork fried rice recipe, as always, let's start with what you're gonna need. For ingredients, you're gonna need 907 grams or 32 ounces of a lean pork loin. You'll need 184 grams or 2 cups of minute white rice or your rice of choice, 220 grams or 1 3/4 cups of mixed vegetables, 120 milliliters or a half cup of soy sauce, 5 large eggs, 60 grams or a half cup of diced up white onions, 60 grams or a half cup of diced up red onions, 80 grams or about 1 cup of cut up mushrooms, 5 grams or about 2 tablespoons of garlic, 5 grams or about 2 tablespoons of ginger, and 30 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of avocado oil or your oil of choice. Outside of the ingredients, the equipment list for this one is extremely easy and it's stuff you should have on hand. All you're gonna need is a cutting board and a knife, a small pot to be able to do your rice in, a big pan to fry everything up in, and I would recommend a small pan on the side to do the eggs separately. It just makes the process easier. Now, there's a decent amount of steps when it comes to the pork fried rice, but thankfully, they're all pretty damn easy. So start by cooking up 2 cups of rice. However you want to do it, just cook them up. I use a pot, put some water in it, 2 cups exactly. Once it boils, I put my rice in the pot and let it do its thing. Once that's out of the way, I can move on to my aromatics, my pork, and my vegetables. As you can see, I have everything already prepped and lined out and ready to go, so I'm not wasting your time. But the first thing I always start with is my aromatics. Start with your white onions and your red onions, dice them up as finely as you can in tiny little pieces and set that aside. Then move on to your garlic. Take your garlic, press it flat with a knife, it'll break open the outside shell, pull it out, dice that up as finely as you can. Then take your ginger, dice that up as finely as you can, and put those 4 ingredients into the same container. We will call this the aromatics container. Once you finish that up, take your mushrooms, dice them up into incredibly small pieces, and put them in a container aside with the mixed vegetables. Those will be one of the last things that go in, but once it's cut up, just set those aside as well. After that, take your pork loin, trim off any excess fat that you have on it because we're trying to keep it to a lean pork. You want a high protein pork, you're not looking to add fat. When you're making something like a pork fried rice with a bunch of carbs in it, you need to counter that by putting as much protein in it as you can. So like I said, start by trimming off all the fat that you can from your pork loin and then cut it up into extremely small cubes. If you like things big and chunky, go for it. But when I'm making my pork fried rice, I like really small cubes. Then set it into a new container and season it up with whatever you want. As always, I use some pepper, some salt, and some onion powder. And then alongside that, I also use some Japanese 7 spice. You can use whatever spices you want that go good in an Asian dish, but for me, those are what I find that works best. Once you have all that cut up and seasoned, set it aside, then get your eggs prepped. Take 5 large eggs, break it into a bowl, season it with some pepper and some salt, whisk that up to where you can get ready to scramble it once you go to fry everything up. Then the final container that I have here is just my 120 milliliters of soy sauce set aside. That'll go in once the rice has been fried up. Once you have all those ingredients prepped up, you can move on to frying things. So let's do that. When it comes to cooking everything up, since everybody has the attention span of a gnat nowadays and I have to make every recipe video I make a short, I'll be doing that in B-roll, but I'll describe what I'm gonna do real quick. I do everything in a 2-step process. Start with your proteins, so I start with the eggs and the pork, and then I'll move on to the rice. So the very first thing I'll do, cook up some scrambled eggs. Take your smaller pan, put your eggs in there on a medium heat, and just kind of stir them up over a 5-minute period. When the eggs are all done, pull them out, put them into a bowl. Remember, it's a meal prep. It doesn't have to be fresh. It's gonna be put in a container and put in the fridge anyway. With the eggs out of the way, move on to the pork. For the pork, start with your aromatics container, the container with the white and red onions, the garlic, and the ginger. Throw that in the pan on high heat and let those go for about 2 to 3 minutes until they have some color on it. You're just trying to release the flavors and smells of these things to where they'll get into your pork. Once those have gone for 2 to 3 minutes, take your pork, throw it in the pan, and sear it up for about 4 to 5 minutes. You're just trying to get good color on all sides of the pork. They are really small pieces, so they'll get cooked fairly quickly. But once they have color on all sides, pull them out, put them in the same container as the eggs, and let your proteins just kind of sit, chill, and do their thing. When you finish that up, move on to your rice. What you'll do for the rice is, in that larger pan, you'll take your 2 tablespoons or your 30 milliliters of avocado oil. Yes, I know we're using oil. Remember, it's going to get divided between 5 dishes to where you're not getting a ton of fat in each meal, but you do need this oil to fry everything up. Take that oil, put it in the pan, and then put your rice in on top of it. Stir everything up to where the oil will cover all of the rice, and then cook that on a medium heat for a good long while. Push everything down flat in the pan, let it sit there for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then stir it and flip it over. And let it do that for about 20 minutes. You're really trying to get that rice good and fried. After that rice has been fried up, add half of the soy sauce into it, add your vegetables, and add your mushrooms. Stir all that up and let it go for another 3 to 4 minutes. After it's gone for 3 to 4 more minutes, add in all your proteins and the rest of your soy sauce. Mix all that together and you're pretty much to a point of wrapped up. So I'm going to get all that wrapped up and put in meal prep containers, and then we'll go over the macros. Final tip on this recipe, the rice is going to take the longest out of anything else. It's going to take about 20 minutes or so. I let mine sit in the pan for about 10 minutes and simmered on medium heat, stirred it up, let it go for 10 more minutes before I added anything else into it. But it really is that easy to get yourself a high protein meal that you can eat on the go, in the office, warm or cold. My work always keeps me on the go, so I don't have access to a microwave, so I'll keep one of these in my cooler, pull it out, eat it, and I've got my protein for the day, just like that. As far as the macro breakdown goes, for the entire recipe, you're looking at 2,821 calories, 207.1 grams of carbs, 109.2 grams of fat, and 273.8 grams of protein. If you divide it into 5 servings like I do, you're looking at 564 calories for each of them, 41.4 grams of carbs, 21.8 grams of fat, and most importantly, 54.8 grams of protein. So if you try this recipe and you love your Chinese like I do, hit the like button down below. If you have anything else you want to see made high protein, let me know in the comments. If you want to help the channel out or just see more coming from me down the road, hit subscribe. But in the meantime, it's my favorite part of the video. It's time for some lunch.